Are you preparing for your second speech in Toastmasters Level 1, Writing a Speech with Purpose? If so, you have come to the right place, because in this video, I am going to break down everything you need to know in preparing for this speech. Now, in a recent Toastmasters video that's going to be popping up here, I talked about how I'm just now embracing the Pathways education program, which is a little embarrassing because I have been a Toastmaster for a decade. But finally, after doing the print manual, Competent Communication, Competent Leadership, I decided it was time to finally stop procrastinating and take on Pathways. And the fun thing is you get to come along with me. So I recently had my icebreaker preparation video, and then I did my icebreaker speech, and now I'm working on the second speech. And as I'm preparing for that, I wanted to share a few important things that you can leverage as well. Now, if you're watching this video, you've probably already done your Toastmasters icebreaker speech, so congratulations. That is a huge accomplishment. It is a difficult thing to do, giving our first speech at Toastmasters. And the fact you've done it, no matter how it went, whether it went really well or not so great, you should be proud of yourself. Give yourself a pat on the back for getting through it. And now the pressure's off. The floodgates are open and you can take on speech after speech because you have taken that first important step. Now, one of the big differences in the second speech is that the timing is adjusted. So in the icebreaker, it's 4 to 6 minutes. And for this second speech, Writing a Speech with Purpose, it's 5 to 7 minutes. What you need to know is that if you were short on time or just over that 4-minute mark for the icebreaker speech, you're going to want to lengthen your next presentation because 5 to 7 minutes is a little bit extra. That extra minute is significant, and so keep that in mind as you're building this speech. According to Toastmasters Pathways Education, the second speech is all about organization. You want to create a well-organized speech, and Toastmasters mentions that there's a number of ways you can do this chronologically, topical speeches, spatial speeches. There's a number of different categories, but the most important thing for you to know is that your speech has an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Those three elements are very key and what you should focus on for this speech. Strong introductions typically introduce something unique in order to hook the audience's attention. What many amateur speakers do, and I believe this is a mistake, is they start with formalities such as Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests. Today I'm going to talk about yada, yada, yada. And they introduce it formally. Instead, by asking a question right off the hop, such as, why is public speaking the number one most common personal fear in the world? Now you get your audience thinking. They're starting to go through that process and you've hooked their attention early on. And that's one of the keys because people have short attention spans. So the quicker you can get their attention, the more likely they're going to pay attention for your entire speech. From there, the body of the speech is going to have the bulk of your information and the conclusion should wrap everything up nicely. Before you begin the process, you want to ask yourself 3 important questions. Question number 1, what is the most important thing you want to say? Question 2, why does it matter to the audience? Question 3, what is it that you want people to take away from your presentation? These are key questions that when I started public speaking, I didn't go through this process. I gave a presentation because I wanted to share what I wanted to share, but I was selfish in my intent. All I cared about is that I did a good job. I wasn't thinking about what is the audience getting from this presentation. And it's so important. If you want to create great presentations that really stick with your audience, you need to be thinking about your audience. So those 3 questions will really help set you up for success on this assignment. So for my second speech that I'm doing in Pathways, the title is Be Interested, Not Interesting. So if I were to go through the process and answer those 3 questions, my answer to number 1 would be the most important thing I want the audience to get is that asking questions is the key to impactful communication. Question number 2, why does it matter to the audience? The answer there, because by asking more questions, they will become more impactful communicators. And question number 3, what do I hope their takeaway is? I hope that they walk away from my presentation and start to ask more questions in their daily conversation. Those are the answers to my 3 and how I will guide myself into taking on the second speech. For my second speech, I've decided to go with the topical organizational structure. So I'll start with my introduction, and then I will introduce 3 topics. Number 1, asking questions in one-on-one conversations. Number 2, asking questions via social media. And number 3, asking questions to an audience when it comes to giving a bigger presentation. My advice to you here is to go through the same process. Answer those 3 questions. Think about a topic that is passionate to you and something that you want to teach or instruct the audience. Decide on one of the organizational structures that Toastmasters points out. Hopefully there's something right away that clicks depending what your subject matter is, and then begin to organize your speech for how you want to present it. Now, many new speakers will still be writing out their full speech word for word, and this is only your second speech, so if that's the case for you, don't stress. You've got to have your own process, but here's what I would encourage you. The ultimate goal with Toastmasters is to eventually get to the point where you don't need any notes. You can simply stand in front of your audience and give a presentation. So if you're able to fast track toward that goal, there are things you can do now that will be easier to detach from those notes. So instead of writing out your speech word for word, the entire thing, there's a couple things you could write out word for word. The first is the introduction, and hopefully you can memorize that and you don't need to read it, but just in case, it can be there on a piece of paper in case you freeze in front of that audience. But then from there, if you have subtopics, don't write all of the words out word for word. Simply have bullet points that are ideas which will trigger your memory as you're giving the presentation. So the example I just gave, I would have perhaps my introduction written out word for word off to the side. From there, I would have 3 bullet points. The first is one-on-one conversations, and I may have a line or 2 about the research that backs up what I'm talking about, but I wouldn't write my full sentences verbatim as I'm going to present them. I could have then a second bullet point on social media and a third bullet point on greater presentations, and then my concluding statement can also be written out word for word. As I'm practicing, the goal is to try to get as comfortable as possible with not reading off of a piece of paper. Again, if you need to do this because it's only your second speech, I totally understand. But start to build those habits. Start to practice your speech enough that you can pretty quickly detach from those notes, because by doing so, when we don't rely on notes, that is when we can really unlock the craft and the magic of public speaking through body language, eye contact, vocal variety. And it's good to establish these habits early on. The Toastmasters curriculum has a worksheet that will help you build out these bullet points, and that might be a good starting point for the information you bring in on the day of your speech. Okay, so you've organized your speech, you've come up with your idea, you've understood what you want the audience to take away from it. Here is my final tip. Practice. Practice, practice, practice. And don't just practice 10 times the day before the speech. Give yourself some time. 2 weeks out, once a day, practice. This is a 5 to 7 minute speech. That's only 5 to 7 minutes that you're taking out of each day. It's very manageable. Maybe it's the first thing you do each morning. Get in the habit of putting in the reps. Even though I have been a Toastmaster for 10 years and I'm just starting the Pathways program now, I'm about to give my second speech in a week's time. And I'm already going through the process of practicing on a regular basis because I want it to become familiar. Once a day, I'm going through this 2 weeks leading up. So what that means is on the day of my Toastmasters meeting, that's just another day. That's day 15 of rehearsing my speech, but now it's in front of an audience. But I built a level of comfort and confidence, and I think that this is a really good approach. After we built the speech, give ourselves about 2 weeks to practice once per day, and I guarantee your confidence will skyrocket. I hope this video on preparing for your second speech, writing a speech with purpose within level 1 of Toastmasters has been beneficial to you. Let me know in the comments. Are you taking on this speech? How are you feeling? Do you have questions for me? Let's keep the communication going. As I mentioned, I am going to give this second speech pretty soon at my local Toastmasters club. I plan to record it and to share it with all of you and use this content as a way that you can learn as I also explore this Toastmasters journey along Pathways. If you have not already done so, please subscribe to my channel. It is the best way you can support my channel. Maybe you've watched a few videos and you haven't subscribed yet. Now's the time to subscribe and check out this video that's popping up. This was my icebreaker speech that I recently did at my Toastmasters club. What do you think? How did I do? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching this video.